Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Carla Salp, and I'm the Acting Communications Director for WSDA, while Hector Castro is on temporary assignment with another agency. We would like to welcome you to our preseason Asian Giant Hornet Press Conference. Today, Sven Spichiger will be giving an overview of our upcoming plans for the season, including a new citizen science project starting on June 1st. Before we start, a couple of housekeeping items. Please keep your line muted and your video off unless you are speaking so that we can ensure the best experience for everyone. And Sven will give an overview and then we will take questions from the media afterward. Sven, please go ahead.
All right, thank you, Carla. Can you hear me all right?
Loud and clear, thanks.
Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for taking a few minutes out of your day. We thought we would take this opportunity to give you a very brief recap of where we stand after last season and let you know about our plans for fighting Asian giant hornet here in Washington State this year and also elsewhere. So first of all, in 2021, we actually ended up catching about 14 specimens. And the first one was a bit of a shocker. It was in Snohomish County. It was a dead specimen that was found. Fortunately, that was the only one that was found. And even though we deployed a full trapping grid around that, no additional detections were made. And we received no reports that were verified or seemed overly suspicious in and around that area. And so we are fairly confident in stating that that particular detection early in 2021 was what we call a one and done. And hopefully that is the last we will ever hear of that. Our trapping and more importantly, reporting by the general public and the citizen science effort actually yielded the detection of 3 nests in 2021. All of them were within 2 miles of each other and very close to the Canadian border, just a little bit to the east of Blaine, Washington. And so we are still in a very tightly compact and confined area, which leads us into this season with a bit of optimism that it has not spread to multiple counties and does not appear to be throughout the rest of Whatcom County, which is really good news. So a couple of things that I would like to go over for the 2022 season. We will be continuing our trapping in northern Whatcom County and also in the Bellingham area in southern Whatcom County. Some of you may be aware that a single specimen was found it was killed on a porch in Bellingham in 2020, and we will continue to trap that area until we have 3 years of negative finds. And this would be our 3rd year, so long as everything continues to go negative in Bellingham. Then we will be able to dial back the trapping in that area. Most of the trapping will be confined adjacent to the Canadian border, again, in northern Whatcom County, all the way out to Linden and going all the way to the Puget Sound. And we'll have about 1,000 program traps out there, and we'll be encouraging those who are interested in helping to go ahead and run their own traps and report their finds to us. That is actually a very helpful activity and allows us to stretch our resources even further, which is kind of nice. In addition to citizen science trapping, which is what I just referred to, citizens are able to go ahead and find a 64-ounce plastic bottle and cut an opening in it. Now this year, we're going to be going back to the H-shaped opening or a square opening in the bottles. We had some reports that folks believed hornets were escaping from those in 2020. So in 2021, we switched to a star-shaped opening. We did do that for a season, but what we found is that those openings tended to close back up and many people had to continually reopen them. So our fear is that hornets, if they are trying to get in to an opening that's been closed, are not going to be able to do that. And so just throwing caution to the wind, we're moving back to one that we know worked in 2020 for certain, and where we did not experience the trouble of the openings closing back up. So that's kind of nice. What we're extremely excited about, and Carla mentioned that starting in June, we will be launching a new citizen scientist project. And this is called our Adopt-a-wasp project. And for Those who don't know, paper wasps generally form on the eaves of houses and outbuildings on your properties. Most people go around and kill them, but this year we're asking citizens who want to participate basically to adopt one of these on their property, report that location to WSDA in our online application, and simply check back in once a week to tell us how it's doing. And what we'll be looking for on that is activity in the nest, and also we'll be looking to see if there is any Asian giant hornet activity on these paper wasp nests. And the reason we're moving and launching this is that in 2021, all three of our nests, for the most part, basically came from public reports where folks had noticed Asian giant hornets feeding on the paper wasps in these paper wasp nests. And sure enough, this turned out to be a very valuable tool for us, and it's pretty easy to do as long as you keep your distance and you have a camera and a steady hand. Just about anybody who has a paper wasp nest on their property can actually help the cause by simply snapping a photo and just checking in on the internet once a week or so and letting us know, hey, I've seen hornets, or hey, I have not. And we believe this will really help paint a picture. We're asking mostly for folks to participate in this, of course, in Whatcom County and the counties surrounding Whatcom County, but statewide, Adopt-a-wasp is not an issue. We love having more information. And so we're very excited about this project. You can find more information on our Asian giant hornet website. And we look forward to anyone who has a property adopting a paper wasp nest this year and keeping an eye out for Asian giant hornet. One other thing I would like to cover this year is some of our research updates. We've had quite a busy year, and we did quite a bit of work in 2021. But one of the things we noticed was, because we are eliminating every nest we find almost immediately, it's very difficult for us to get good information. And for that reason, we will be partnering up with researchers in both South Korea and Japan. In Japan, Hideshi Naka from Totori University will be partnering with Dr. Jacqueline Serrano, who is with the Agriculture Research Service with the USDA. And they will be testing different traps and different lure combinations. Jackie is one of the ones who develops these lures, and we feel like we just don't have a large enough population here to see if these lures are actually working or not. And our fondest hope is when we ask people to hang a trap, that the lure we're putting in there actually works. And we know orange juice and rice wine works, but we don't know how well it works. So we're always looking to improve upon this. And the only way we can do that is to do this in an area where we have established populations of Asian giant hornet. The reason we're also working in Korea, and in Korea we'll be working with Dr. Moonbo Choi of Kyunpuk National University near Daegu in South Korea. And he has secured a private farm somewhere north of there, where we will be able to set up a number of different experiments. And a couple of the questions we're hoping to answer are, number one, do our traps work? Do different variations work better than other variations? And bring back some of these answers in an area that we know has Asian giant hornets. We're also going to be testing basically a tracking array that will allow us to see how they forage. So right now we're asking folks to hang traps in the tree line about 9 feet high if they can get it that high, but no less than 6 feet high. And this is all based on some literature, but we've never really seen it in action. And so we'll be testing different trap placements, and of course, tracking the foraging behavior so we can see how our trapping can be even more effective than it's already been. And the last and most important thing, of course, is to see how far queens disperse. This is a very difficult thing to do. And so we will actually be working with Dr. Choi in South Korea to set up a flight mill. And the idea is to get emerging queens, tie them to the flight mill to see at least how far they're capable of flying, and also try to devise experiments that will allow us to know how far they actually disperse after mating in the fall. And the reason this is important is because right now we're basing our trapping on foraging distance, which is known to be approximately 2 kilometers away from a nest on average, but possibility of going at least 8 kilometers away. And so we know how far we can do this, but it would really be better to know how far queens actually disperse, and then we can feel a lot more confident about the areas we choose to focus on for trapping. Also coming up for 2022 is we are exploring the use of drone technology, and we don't want to alarm anybody. We're not going to be spying or anything, but quite literally, when we tag an Asian giant hornet and it flies 30 to 40 miles an hour past a bunch of 8-foot tall Himalayan blackberry, those of us in our program actually have a lot of trouble keeping up with it. And so what we have done is we have partnered up with an Australian company called Wildlife Drones, who makes probably the best radio telemetry tracking software as a payload for drones. And the idea is, after we have tagged a hornet, is to be able to get up in the air and go over some of these barriers and allow us to put a better GPS signal on that tracking tag and allow us to get to it a lot safer than we've been able to do in the past. Because I have to tell you, when you're wandering around with headphones on, trying to cut through blackberry, knowing you could walk into a nest any second, it is a little unnerving. So having that technology that's been in existence for a while as a tool in our toolbox is really going to be helpful for the 2022 season, we believe. The last thing I would like to cover is a possible name change, or actually first designation of an official name for Asian giant hornet. That's the term we have been using. That's not actually an official common name. Dr. Looney with our program has made a suggestion into the Entomological Society of America, who has a committee to designate official common names. There was not actually an official common name on record, and you've heard this referred to many different ways. You've heard it referred to as murder hornet, Asian giant hornet, and he has submitted a suggestion. That has been reviewed and will be basically examined by the membership for 30 to 90 days, I believe it is. And right now we're still waiting for an answer back. But I know folks are wondering if we will be making a name change, and WSDA will adopt whatever the Entomological Society of America eventually officially accepts. And so I think that was about all I had to say. Carla, do you believe I forgot anything?
I don't think so, Sven, and I might have missed it, but just to clarify that it will be you and Dr. Looney who will be doing the activities in South Korea.
Yeah, we'll be going over briefly to get everything set up with Dr. Choi's lab, show them how the stuff works, and then we'll leave it in their hands. And I think Chris may be going back in the fall just to get our gear back, but pretty much that's what's planned. And then Dr. Jackie Serrano will be working with Dr. Naka in Japan. So that's it. And then Carla, we did forget something. We are having a training session where we get all of our gear out, make sure it's not dusty anymore and still working. And we also invite the media, and this is scheduled for July 12th at Birch Bay State Park. And at that point, we would invite the media to meet with us and get footage and attend the training if they wish. With that, I guess I'm free to answer questions.
Yeah, thanks, Sven. Yes, I was going to make the sort of, save the date for your calendars for July 12th. We're still finalizing everything for that, and media will be required to register. And so if you sign up for our news releases, you will get the notice that that is when that registration is available. All right, so we are ready for questions. Just a reminder, if you have a question, there's two different ways that you can ask it. You can raise your hand and we will unmute your line and you can ask a question that way, or you can enter a question into the chat box and we will answer questions that are submitted through the chat. So we'll go ahead and get started. I think, is it, oh, a hand was up and then a hand went down. 1 second, please. I'm gonna scroll back up through the chat. Okay, is it Nicole, I think, that has her hand and sent a request to unmute there.
Hello?
There you go. Go for it.
What is the proposed name to replace Asian giant hornet? Can you say?
Sorry, can you identify yourself and your media?
Yeah, I'm Nick Geranius with Associated Press.
Thank you very much for the question. The issue with me disclosing what the proposed name is I happen to know what the committee moved forward with is not actually the one that Chris proposed. And so to be responsible, we are going to wait until the ESA or the Ant Society of America has absolutely made it official. Because one of the things we don't want to do is let a name that may be changed through committee or through the review process start appearing in the press. That would be worse than just not mentioning it at all. So sorry if that's not the answer you wanted to hear, but I can assure you that it's going to adhere to the standards of the Better Names Project, which the Entomological Society of America has launched over the last few years and seen a few offensive names removed. And this will be one that will definitely cover it for sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Sven. A question from folks on YouTube. Why can't we delay destroying an early nest and go about studying them that way?
We certainly could, but it's still not going to be a true representation of how traps and how tracking works. So to clarify even more, we do actually run all of our experiments here. We just don't trust the data as much as if we were to set these up in an area that actually has a very strong and vibrant population. And depending upon what time of year we find a nest, it is a little irresponsible on our part to not act on it as immediately as possible. Last year, we were very fortunate. We were able to track down and eliminate all of the nests before new breeding cast came out. But in 2020, we were right on the fence of new virgin queens emerging and dispersing off and creating new nests the next year. So it's always in our best interest to eliminate these as soon as we find them. Kind of like letting a fire go, just to watch how it burns,
Thanks, Sven. Erica asks, there have been no Asian giant hornets reported this year, correct? And are there any signs or indications that show whether we should expect an increase or decrease this year?
Okay, so we do receive reports throughout the year. So we have had some reported. None of these have been confirmed yet. We have one that's fairly serious that actually came in over the weekend that we're investigating that happens to be in the same area where all three nests were located last year. So obviously that one catches our attention. We're not sure what to make of it because it is very early for the kind of activity that was described. And most everything else in the insect world, including all of the rest of our trapping programs, are actually running late, if you know what I mean. So we're not seeing the beetles we used to see this early in the year. And that is all related basically to the strange weather that we've had throughout the months of April and now mostly through May as well. So we do continue to receive reports. We are checking them, but we have no verified detections yet in 2022. But as always, we'll let everybody know if we do.
Another question, assuming there's similar monitoring taking place in Canada, do you know of any monitoring taking place in Oregon or Idaho?
I'm not 100% sure about Idaho, but I do know that Oregon has received some federal money to do trapping as part of one of their commodity survey projects. And we did meet with our counterparts in Oregon last week of April, and they did discuss some plans to do trapping, obviously on the northern part of Oregon that borders Washington. And I know that our Canadian counterparts also plan to be trapping this year as well.
Thanks, Sven. Nick Popham has his hand up. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Nick. If you still have a question, you can go ahead and ask.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I had posted in the chat too, so just ignore the chat. But I was wondering, I remember when there was concern when this all started in 2020 that we wanted to capture, as many nests as possible to eradicate the hornet. I was wondering just how long do you think it'll take before we can officially say we've eradicated this thing? And should people feel that progress has been made from 2020 to now on getting rid of these guys?
Okay, so great questions. So the standard in regulatory entomology, and I'm a regulatory entomologist, is that we can expect me to call this eradicated when I have 3 consecutive years with no detections. And so we have not had 1 year with no detections in northern Whatcom County. I had opened up by saying that we're entering our last year of trapping in and around the Bellingham area, which was based on a single detection there. And that will be, I'll knock wood here, but with negative trap or negative survey results this year, the Bellingham area would be declared free of. But actually, for regulatory purposes, we usually go on the whole county. So you can count on us trapping for at least 3 more seasons. If we do not find anything this season, 2 more seasons after that, and then we'll call it eradicated. But honestly, since we had multiple detections in 2019 from what looks to be different sources, and we had the weird Snohomish one last year, which was dead, so not really a population. I think we'll be keeping a very close watch, maybe not as intensive an activity as we do in northern Whatcom County the last couple of years, but moving forward, we'll definitely be on the lookout for these pests in the future.
And then Sven, if you don't mind, for the that second question I had, do you feel like progress has been made from the start to where we are now?
Absolutely. I know we're a lot faster at tracking and finding nests. I know we're finding better tools for the public to help their own cause and let us know where to come spend resources. Certainly with the Adopt-a-wasp program, to me, that is progress. We've identified a biology and a behavior that we know is going on here, and then we can use that to our advantage. So that to me is progress. And to me, after what we saw with a different hornet being introduced in Europe and spreading to multiple nations within 3 to 4 years, I think we're doing pretty good right now. We always like to be optimistic. We know it can jump containment at any minute, and all it needs is a favorable weather pattern and folks moving it around or it moving itself around. But that hasn't happened yet, and we seem to know about where the nests are located in Washington County, and we're focusing our outreach, our trapping efforts there, but we're also watching the rest of the state at the same time. And to me, the fact that you guys are all still here and interested means we've made some progress in, at least, if not just fighting this, fighting other invasive species as well. So we really appreciate your assistance, and more than anything, the folks who have participated in the citizen science projects, to me, is the biggest sign of progress that we have.
Thanks, Ben. And just to clarify, Sven said Washington County. He meant Whatcom County. And and also one thing I meant to follow up on earlier from Sven's statement is we also noticed wasps predating and hornets predating on wasps in 2020 in addition to the 2021. So we do have a couple of years of that, which has prompted the Adopt-a-Wasp program. Okay, next question, and I think this is a quick one, but just to clarify one more time, did you say this was the last year for trapping in the Bellingham area?
Only if we get all negatives again, and then we'll have minimal trapping, but it won't be a heavy grid trap like we have set up the last couple of years.
Thanks. And question from Hannah, is this the non-native insect we're most concerned about at this time?
No. It is one of many that we're most concerned with. The pest program here at WSDA has a full-blown invasive moth survey that goes on every year, and the ramifications of certain detections in that survey are pretty hard to think of if we fall down on the job and let those get out. And what I mean by that is there is the newly named spongy moth or Lymantria dispar. There are some versions of that or different strains of that eat conifers, and allowing that to get established here in the Pacific Northwest would be absolutely devastating. we are fighting a rather sizable Japanese beetle infestation in the Grandview area down in Yakima County and also just a little bit of Benton County. And that's we're doing active treatments for that right now, and that's going pretty smoothly. And you know, that one is a pretty nasty pest on the eastern half of the United States, and so we're very happy that we've been given the opportunity to do our best to keep that from becoming permanently established here. And then, of course, we have any other number of surveys for plant pathogens, exotic weeds, many other things. So to me, Asian giant hornet is one of the big ones, but it's not the only one.
Right. And just for perspective for everyone, last year there were over 24,000 Japanese beetles that we trapped in the Grandview area. And the year before that, we trapped 2. So we have a big problem in Grandview. But this is not about Japanese beetles. So moving on, there's a question about foraging distance versus queen dispersal. Is it suspected that queens travel farther or shorter distances when dispersing compared to foraging?
Actually, it is absolutely unknown. The only information I have is what our own trapping array has found, where our original nests that were detected, or where we think we had nests in 2019, we know they haven't spread too much more than 2 kilometers from that original location. At least that's not where we have detected additional nests. And so that's all we have to go on. It literally is an unknown, which is why it's so important to be able to get a hold of queens and release them, which is, unfortunately, that is something we absolutely cannot do here. We can throw them on a flight mill in the lab, but it's really not the same. And frankly, some of our queens, we don't know if they're genetically capable, if you will, of doing the complete flight that those who are in an established population would do. Of course, there's always differences you have to account for, but to me, having the answer to the question is one of the most important things as we design our trapping moving into the next year, and it really just does not exist. And so rather than complain about it, we thought, let's go figure it out. And this is a pretty good opportunity coming up here.
Thanks, Ben. There's a question about whether WSDA actually proposed the new name to the ESA. I want to clarify that for everyone. This is a proposal that Dr. Looney submitted on his own. It is not an agency proposal. Dr. Looney has indicated he isn't interested in speaking with the press about this. However, we mentioned it today just because we knew we were going to get questions because there was quite a bit of press around it when it happened. So sorry, we can't give more information on that. It's not a WSDA proposal. And like I said, you can try to reach out to Dr. Looney, but he has indicated to me that he's not interested in speaking to the press about it. So we'll move on from that. Question, did Canada have detections of Asian giant hornet last year, or have they had any this year?
I've not been alerted to any this year. We do know that they had 1 specimen, curiously, that came to a Japanese beetle trap that probably, if I threw a stone, I could have hit it from the first nest that we eradicated in 2021. And so it was just across the border. It was quite dead and shriveled up when they found it, but it obviously was alive when it came to the trap. The best we can make out is this was a straggler from the first nest that we took out in 2021, but you never know. But they did get 1 detection, and unfortunately, it was not in the hornet traps. It was actually in a trap of another program, but we were made aware of that. And the Canadians are definitely watching that area very closely as well.
There's a question asking what the hornet is that you mentioned that was introduced in Europe and then spread.
Sure, it's called Vespa velutina, and here's part of the confusion. That one is also known as the Asian hornet. So, you know, the reasoning for Dr. Looney to remove some of that confusion actually stems from when somebody actually reported a real positive here to a British site where they are also tracking Asian hornets, and he got confused online. So Chris wanted to kind of change that name, but it is Vespa velutina. It was believed to have arrived, I believe, in Spain in planting pots, if you will, and it spread kind of like wildfire. And there it does about 30% damage to the honeybee industry. And so it's been a real serious threat. It is also a threat in South Korea, and we hope to be making use of some of our time there to study that species and some of the other Asian species as well while we are over there. So looking forward to being prepared to battle all hornets should they land on our shores.
Next question is from Jacqueline with the Everett Herald. How do you expect the cooler, wet weather to impact Asian giant hornets this year? Would this be favorable weather to the species or less beneficial?
In theory, it would be less beneficial to the species, but insects in general have a great way of adapting to changes in climate and changes in weather. Generally speaking, when we have cooler evenings, it's not as good. I can confirm that most of our trapping for the year for our other projects is kind of behind where we typically see at this time of year. I run traps on my property here. I think you can see one behind me actually. And that one does not have the types of specimens I would normally see in it this time of year. So I would say across the board, not just for Asian giant hornets, we're seeing a delay in activity. That said, we had a few sunny days last week, and everything kind of popped here on my property, and I expect the same will be true for Asian giant hornet. I do know that in South Korea, they are active and have a few cells built in some of the nests that they're monitoring for us to do research on. And so at least in South Korea, we know they're pretty much acting the same. And actually the place we're going is a very similar climate to what we have here.
Thanks. A question from Ross Courtney, I believe, with Good Fruit Grower. Historically speaking, what are some good invasive insect eradication stories in Washington or in the U.S.?
Boy, there aren't a lot of great stories where the humans win. Unfortunately, we're behind in that battle most of the time. But I would say, I'm not going to say just in the U.S., but here in Washington, our battle against spongy moth has been a fairly huge success story. This is a moth that has become established in the East Coast and has been spreading very slowly to the West for over a century now. And, the dedicated trappers that we have running around setting moth traps every year have picked up introductions, either coming over on campers or RVs or moving pods from the east, or unfortunately here in the West, our vibrant trade also leads to these coming over on ships of cargo and other things like that. And even some of the nastier strains that feed on conifer. We get detections of these most years, and we have been able to successfully keep this from becoming permanently established. So to me, that's my favorite success story. And as for the massive population in the East, the national program to do slow the spread for that really has kept that from leaping all across the nation overnight, if you will. We haven't fared so well with other pests, but there are a few of these where we can kind of get in there and really do some damage and keep our crops and our environment safe here.
Thanks. Do you want to mention citrus longhorn beetle? I don't know if that was before your time, but
well, it was, but it is actually it's a very happy thing to mention. So a longhorn beetle called citrus longhorn beetle, which, and I can attest to this, basically wreaks roughshod over just about any plant you can think of overseas. So you'll be hiking along and they'll just be falling out of the trees. That unfortunately was detected here in Tukwila, and one of the inspectors watched it fly across the road into a green belt. And after counting holes in the greenhouse where these citrus longhorn beetles came in, and by that I mean exit holes from the plants, we had determined that there were several of them. There was a very aggressive campaign, and this involved some painful activities like removing vegetation from people's lots. And this was done over a very small area and declared eradicated after just a few seasons, which is really impressive because the sister species called Asian longhorn beetle, it took decades to have that one eradicated from parts of New York City, New Jersey, the Chicago area. And so while we're under constant threat from all of these, there are actually some success stories, and all of the really good success stories involve folks calling them in just because they saw something they didn't recognize, and people acting aggressively and not waiting until it's out of control. Obviously, you don't always get that chance. Spotted lanternfly, unfortunately, emerald ash borer, some where it seems like we've lost, but just bear in mind that we're pretty tricky too sometimes, and we can find ways to minimize their impact over time. And so it's not always a completely lost cause, and folks do continue to work on it even if it seems like it's out of control. But we're always happy when we can get something like a citrus longhorn beetle where it did get out, it did get established, and then some aggressive activity and, you know, a little shared pain, if you will, for all involved, but leads to a really positive outcome later where you're not basically having to treat your crops every year for the rest of time because you didn't do anything. So thank you for reminding me of that one, Carla. That is a Washington shining star, if you will.
I always want to highlight our shining stars. Question from David with Bellingham Herald. Last year, you mentioned that specimens from the 3 nests that were eradicated were genetically sequenced. Did the results from those tests come back, and did they show anything?
Yeah, they did. And actually, we did a little bit more work. We did some fecal pellet analysis as well, which let us know what they were eating. So that was pretty cool. I think probably the takeaway from this is we'll never know what exact nest those 3 nests came from, but we do know they're related to the initial introduction that was discovered here in Washington. And so as a refresher for folks, the first nest in North America was in Nanaimo, British Columbia, and the genetic testing from those specimens shows that they are most likely related to specimens that came from Japan, and those found in Whatcom County were most genetically close to those found in South Korea. In subsequent years, we found nothing in the genetic analysis that suggests we had new introductions. So that's what we can tell from those.
Thanks. Question on YouTube. There was a recent headline about using pheromone attractants in trapping. Is that part of what's being tested in the new traps?
I don't, well, yes, Jackie Serrano's has developed some pheromone-based lures. One of the things, however, that we were most interested in, obviously, was the behavior that we observed in the field, which was Asian giant hornets being able to readily find paper wasp nests. And just to clarify this a little bit, we watched one of them move to 3 or 4 very visible paper wasp nests, and then we saw it do something that was a little unexpected. It went inside of the pipe of a basketball hoop, where the nest was completely hidden from view. So we know they're queuing in on some sort of, well, we don't know that for certain. They could have watched it crawl into the pipe, I suppose, and followed it in. But it's more likely to me that there is some chemical cue coming off of the paper wasp nests. And I know Dr. Serrano has been working on that, and hopefully we'll have something related to that to test out while we're overseas as well.
So just to clarify for folks, it's not the same pheromone that was mentioned in that article, however, of that research paper that came out. I think that was a sex-based pheromone.
Right.
Okay, great. What new measures, if any, have been taken since the first Asian giant hornets were discovered here to prevent more of them from arriving on ships? Has anything changed there?
Yes, well, actually, that changed very quickly. First of all, I personally attend the port meetings in Portland, Blaine, and also the Seattle area. And I'll all of the inspectors were, of course, briefed on the situation in Whatcom County, the situation in Vancouver, British Columbia. And of course, this pest, with all the attention it got, moved right to the top of their list of things they're definitely keying in on when they are doing their inspections. Without knowing exactly where they came from, it would be tough to identify a port overseas to see if there are any mitigations that could be put into place there. We would have to really prove that. That's always a delicate negotiation, if you will. And not knowing exactly what ports these may have come from, it would be very hard to make any changes there. But certainly our own customs and border protection folks have been targeting this pest ever since it was detected. And in fact, one or two of them are on loan to us every other week, helping us doing the tracking in the field, and they attend our biweekly internal meetings as well. So definitely they're aware of it, and I know a lot of this information went to ports nationwide. And although I'm not privy to those particular meetings, I do know that it was mentioned that all ports had been given briefings and certainly pest alerts. And I know we sure sent out a lot of breaker mounts and display materials to these folks. So I know they have good working stuff to help them target their inspections.
Thanks. And just to further clarify, we don't know that they came in over like on a container ship or anything like that from the ports. That's certainly one possibility, but there's no indication. We have no information about exactly how they arrived in North America.
Right.
So I think I've caught up all of the questions in the chat. If anybody has another question, here's your last call to pop one in there, or you can raise your hand again if you have another question. While we're waiting for that, one further reminder to mark your calendars for June 12th. If you'll be interested in attending the Asian Giant Hornet Field Day, which, as Sven mentioned, for anybody who came in late, maybe we have a training for our staff and practice, and this will likely be your only opportunity as media to get some kind of field video or photographs. So we would encourage you to participate in that if you can.
Just one thing, Carla, you actually said June 12th there. It's July.
Thank you we have to watch each other's backs.
Yep, that's right.
July 12th, yes. And that notice will go out on our listserv for news releases. So when that is all firmed up, that's where you'll get the notice. So please sign up for that if you haven't. One more question here. It says, by quote unquote paper wasps, are we talking about a particular species or category of social insects? Are bald-faced hornets in this category?
Bald-faced hornets are a different genus. So paper wasps usually belong to the genus Polistes. Most of the species, or most of the ones people encounter here, are actually an introduced species, Polistes diminuata, or the European paper wasp. But we also have some native paper wasps. So you think of the open cells that you will see forming on the eaves of your house or other out structures. Bald-faced hornet nests are generally a round ball that you may find up in a tree or sometimes down hidden in grass. And we're not recommending that people adopt one of these because you really won't be able to see the activity other than the wasp coming and going. And they tend to be a lot more aggressive, and we don't want anybody to get stung. So we want people to be safe when they're doing this. And most folks walk past paper wasp nests on the eve of their roof every day without noticing them until they see it and say all of a sudden, I want to get a can of wasp spray. But this year we're asking you just to let it go through its life cycle and keep an eye on it. But basically we're asking folks to target paper wasps only. And if you need to Google search that, you're going to look under the genus Polistes. So Polistes.
And just so everyone knows, in our latest blog, or it went out on Friday actually, the Adopt-a-wasp blog, there are photos of paper wasps specifically in that. Media can use those photos as well, with credit to the Washington State Department of Agriculture, or you can email me. I popped my email in the chat there, and I can connect you with some good photos of paper wasps that I took on my own house. So I think that is all of the questions we'd like to.
I had a question, if you can hear me.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I had my hand up. Hi, it's John Ryan from
I'm sorry, I missed
KUOW.
that.
That's okay. I'm wondering if you have any sense of what share of incoming cargo ships are inspected for insect pests in Washington or British Columbia? Is it a small sample? Is it most of them as a default, or how much is going on like that?
I only have basic numbers. You should really refer that one to Customs and Border Protection. But what I can tell you is that the inspections are extremely targeted, and they do pre-inspection before they leave their home ports. And I know for a fact that they will get a heads up on ships that they are worried about before they even get to port. And that's because they are now forced to do insect inspections overseas before they come out as well. But things happen. Other countries are not under our control. The only thing that is under control is when they land, but I know it's not 100%. So, but if you need the exact number, I would refer to Customs and Border Patrol for that.
Great, thanks, Sven. And that's a good reminder. We have spoken briefly about a couple of things that are really in USDA's realm. So I would encourage you to reach out if you have questions about the work that Jackie Serrano is doing, for example, or the APHIS inspections on the border. I encourage you to to reach out to the USDA's press office, and they can get you the best information about those USDA activities. I'd like to thank everyone again for participating. As Sven has mentioned, the public participation has been absolutely critical and a game changer for our success in this program. And really, we wouldn't be where we are without what the public has been doing. And you are so critical to helping get that word out to the public. So we'd like to thank you for that. If we'll look forward, I guess, to hopefully no announcements of Asian giant hornets this year, although I'm not that optimistic. But I think that's all we have for today. Reach out to me if you have any additional questions or needs. I popped my email in the chat there. And thanks so much for participating in today's press conference.
Thank you, everybody.